Hello and welcome to this tutorial series where we will be looking at how to produce very complex OSL effects, specifically on this beautiful sculpt by Banshee. Now this kind of sculpt, it was designed for miniature painters to sharpen your teeth on, sharpen your claws on. It's a training piece, it's something designed for this kind of experimental work. It's inexpensive, it's very detailed, and you can do a whole heap of different things with it. So if you did want to experiment, especially with complex OSL and producing character effects, skin tones, unusual skin tones, I would highly suggest picking up this bust or something like it and having a go at it. To begin the process, I airbrush opaque white and I pinch a very small amount of sol yellow. In actuality, sol yellow was a colour I've been previously airbrushing, and there was a tiny amount left over that I wasn't wholly aware of, but I quite like the effect. By adding the yellow, it's not such a striking two-tone effect. If I just went in with white, sure, I could build it up with the greys, but this time that slight yellow just ameliorated the harshness of the white, so I thought that was quite a nice mistake that I made. I make a lot of mistakes. I guess most of my painting is just covering up mistakes that I make along the way. So the entire video was shot in front of a student. This is an example of a student-led tutorial where I give one-to-one instruction online. So I'm demonstrating where we should place our first highlight. So we use the airbrush as a direct sketch from underneath the miniature to give that strong singular light source. The blue is the surrounding ambient light, which we'll introduce into it later. Some of the camera angles, some of the things you'll see in here are a bit weird because this was a lesson given to a student, and I've adapted it for the seminar series. It was too good of a teaching opportunity to just teach it once and not capture this on camera. So I'm demonstrating here. This is our source picture. This is what we wanted to recreate. We are looking at the singular strong red light source underneath the miniature, and then we have the ambient blue. So the single strongest light source will be the red with a touch of magenta, and then the blue will overlap that. You can see the blue is a lot duller in comparison to the red, which has this almost like hellish underlighting to it. The blue, being an ambient surrounding, won't have that focused highlight. It won't have that strength, that saturation. Instead, what we'll have, you can see I'm demonstrating here how you have the turquoise bounce effect, whereas the shadows, the very darkest shadows, come in between the blue and the red, where the ambient light hits the strongest light source. In this case, it's the red underglow. Now, in our example, in our miniature, we don't want it directly underneath. We want it slightly off to the side. I think it gives slightly more character, slightly more energy. It's more interesting to look at if the light source is slightly to the side. When you view movies, for example, if you just have a single tracking shot on a stable bedding, it's not a very interesting shot. But if you turn the camera slightly at an angle, well, you generate interest. Okay, so to begin the process, I use Huldra Blue. Now this is watered down with Life Color acrylic thinner, so we have around 40% acrylic thinner to paint. Now the Huldra Blue is already quite thin, so experiment with this. My aim here is not to cover up, it's to pigment, it's to feel my way through this. When I begin the airbrushing process, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to end up. I'm not exactly sure where I'm trying to head with it. I haven't got a preconceived idea of where I want all my highlights and shadows should absolutely be. Instead, I have a rough guide map in the form of the picture in the notebook, and I'll kind of react to what happens on the miniature itself. I think it's important that you don't go in with a very strong preconceived idea because of brush strokes, because of just the chaos of painting a miniature. You will end up with things that you're not quite happy with. So in the beginning, we have a slight amount of yellow there. Don't feel like this is a mistake. Don't feel like this is a drawback. Instead, embrace it and try and work with it, because you'll end up with something even you didn't imagine, and that's exciting. I mean, that's an exciting process to be a part of, to paint a miniature and for you not to even know what you'll end up with. Hopefully it'll be good at the end. Fingers crossed. I mean, it turns out quite nice. I know the end. I've put up pictures online. Oh, and there is a PDF tutorial available right now that you can view today in the PDF section. So you could spring over there, have a look at a breakdown of the technicalities behind OSL. If you want to put on, say, a plasma reactor, or if you want to do it on a glowing lumen globe, well, it's all explained in the PDF as well. But this video is very much a tight focus on what we're doing on this miniature. So the first coat is down. I like it. Now I'll add a second coat. Exactly the same, Huldra blue. I'm reinforcing the shadows that I've built up so far. I especially want it along the crook of the nose. I want quite a strong contrast there. And I'll leave the white relatively untouched. Now I do need a slight overlap with the blue onto the white. If we didn't, well, it would look too abrupt, too much like a two-tone process going from blue over to the red. So we do need a slight overlap on the miniature itself. You can see it's not just black to blue to white. There's a crossover. Okay, I'm explaining something off in the background. I wonder what I'm saying. I'm sure it's something deeply relevant and inspirational, and something I've completely forgotten to include here. But it looks nice, right? Look at the bust. We can see almost like a black and white. We can see where the red is going to go later on. And you can do lots and lots of different things with this sculpt. It's one of those sculpts, it's one of those faces that you can make look evil, you can make it look good, you can do a lot of things with this. In fact, Banshee, the artist who sculpted this, has his own Patreon. I highly suggest you check it out. And he ran a competition at the start of the year, seeing the creativity, what artists can do with this bust. All different kinds of crazy things. Highly advise you check it out. I believe it was in the Heavier Metal forum. Okay, to build on the ambient glow. Now, because we're working from a 2D image, how do we translate this to 3D? Well, this is my attempt to do so. I'm introducing a secondary light source. So this is the ambient glow. As we talked about earlier, as you can see on the picture itself, how it has a stronger turquoise highlight, then a deeper shadow, and then it goes into the red. This is an attempt to give a lighter blue. So I am using, I believe it was Hero Blue, I want to say. Yes, it was Hero Blue. It was Hero Blue. And I'm just sketching out a soft highlight. Now this goes on the very top of the head, top of the shoulder blades. In fact, it goes in the opposite direction from our initial highlight layer with the white. So we have the Nadia shadow, which is a trademarked term, by the way. That's mine, completely mine. And we use a zenithal highlight in the opposite direction to help build up the contrast. Now this will look slightly kind of weak in the beginning, but we'll build it up further and further and further with sunny skin tone to really peak the highlights. Now it's important that we don't end up with a highlight as intense as the red. The ambient glow has a light source is much farther away than the red. We can communicate this through the piece itself, through the intensity, through the saturation and the chroma of the underlying red. Because the turquoise, because the blue layer is an ambient source, which means a light source surrounding the miniature, it's much further away, it's much duller in nature. We don't want it to peak as intensely as the red. So when we do introduce the red, we'll be moving quite rapidly between a dark red through an orange up to a sunny skin tone, and we'll keep that luminosity within the paint job to represent that underglow being quite a bit closer to the face than the ambient blue. Okay, let's introduce a touch of sunny skin tone. Why sunny skin tone? Well, there's quite a bit of white in there, quite a bit of yellow, but there's also some other colours like browns, reds, purples, blues, everything that a good skin tone needs. Instead of using pure white, which would give an idea of a very strong light source close to the miniature, we can instead use a colour that's lighter, but still has a good amount of corruption to it. I love that phrase. It's something I picked up from a portraiture painter. So whenever they prime a piece of paper or palette, they don't start painting the skin tones directly onto the paper itself. Instead, what they'll do is the process called corrupting the paper, where they use either grey or brown across the entirety of the surface, and then they'll start building up the skin tones. That way it gives them a much more nuanced, natural background to start building up their skin tones. But it's a word I want to introduce more and more into my own painting vocabulary, corrupting. I think is a really, really nice phrase. So what we're doing with the blue, we're corrupting it with a brighter colour. We continue the corruption with adding pure sunny skin tone, and this goes right at the very apex of the highlight. Again, we aren't trying to add very strong focal localized highlights. If we imagine a torch, we take a torch, we pop it right against the side of this figure of this miniature, then you have the underlying light source of the red. Well, we can roughly estimate that this light source will come to a very small, succinct, unified light, kind of like a round dot, if you will. We do not want this round dot, we do not want this to be higher in luminosity than the underglow. So it's a very, I guess, roundabout, complicated way of saying, don't make this highlight too bright. There you go. Much better. I'll reinforce the highlight again with sunny skin tone. Don't peak those highlights, don't make them too strong. And that's it for this video. That's all I want to cover for the blue. Next time we'll be looking at the red and the underglow and preserving the luminosity. How to really punch up the saturation there to make sure that there's a visual difference between the ambient light and the ambient surroundings and the strong underlight. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, this video will be available for free for a very limited time. Thank you so much. If you want to share it, really highly appreciated. Better yet, join in the fun with the Patreon. You can sign up for $7 a month. That gives you access to every single previous PDF tutorial. I think there's 21, 22 at the moment, covering a diverse range of subjects from OSL, real metallic, true metallic. There's so much on there I've even forgotten. $15 gives you access to all previous video tutorials, which is up to about 120 odd at the moment, which covers again a wide variety of different subjects, and you can actually see the miniature much better than I can when I'm painting it. So get the bird's eye view, get the God's eye view, covering all different kinds of subjects. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll catch you in the next vid. Bye bye.